So thank you, CanBim, for putting together this event and inviting me to moderate. We have an excellent group of innovative companies here today. I'll let them each introduce themselves. But for a bit of backdrop on myself and then some housekeeping, I'm the co-founder and managing partner of Ironspring. We are a network-driven early-stage venture capital firm backed by a network of heavy industry operating companies in investing in early-stage digital industrial innovation. Our goal is really to help solve the commercialization hurdles and funding gap that exists today in the pre-growth, post-seed stage. We launched officially in April of this past year and got pretty fortunate on timing and closing our fund. And we're excited about helping companies like the ones today presenting to really grow into successful businesses and help change the industry. For a bit of housekeeping before passing over to intros, for the audience members, please submit your questions in the Q&A. These will be directed to me and the companies. I'll sift through redundant questions and post these in the poll section for the audience to upvote. And we'll prioritize based on upvoting and which questions haven't been asked already or answered already by the companies. So now for introductions, I'll hand it over directly to you guys, starting with Noah Dolgoy with Tread.
I hope everyone can hear me. This is always one of the interesting parts of doing these webinars is you feel like you're basically speaking to yourself, and so you don't get the nods from the audience that you normally do when you're in person, but we'll just have to adjust accordingly. In any case, my name is Noah Dolgoy. I'm the CEO and founder of Tread. Tread is a platform that manages the logistics chain for subcontracted heavy equipment and material movement. So what that means in practice is basically we create virtual fleets out of large networks of subcontracted material haulers, dump trucks, ready-mix vehicles, things like that. And so what Tread operates across North America, we're a team of 34 people, primarily located in Toronto. Once we create virtual fleets, we use a variety of what we would consider to be industry best optimization, visualization tools to really improve the ROI for contractors, material suppliers, builders, pavers, excavators, et cetera, on their spend on those subcontracted haulers. So really pleased to be here today and really excited to share some insights with some other folks that are doing really, really cool work in the industry.
Thank you, Noah. Kevin Forstall at Dozer.
Hey everyone, Kevin Forstall at Dozer, co-founder, CEO. Dozer is a company that builds software solutions to enable e-commerce in the heavy equipment rental industry, specifically here in construction. We work across North America. We've got just under 40 people working out of the Kitchener office, headquartered here in Canada. We are two products. One is a marketplace. We're an aggregator for heavy equipment rentals, a one-stop shop, if you will, for transparent pricing and availability of heavy equipment. And number two, again, being obsessed with enabling e-commerce. We're building software that actually sits on rental houses' websites. So if you've ever been to a rental house and purchased or rented online, you may actually be using the Dozer software in the background. We may be powering that transaction. Also happy to be here. Thank you.
Thanks, Kevin. Matt Mann at INDUS.AI.
Hi, everyone. My name is Matt. I'm co-founder and CEO of INDUS.AI. We're a machine learning platform for large construction sites. We provide general contractors real-time visibility and insights to better the safety and productivity of their job sites. The impact of using our solution is that some of our customers are able to get 73% reduction in job site violations, safety violations, decrease their top 4 cycle time if they're building up in a vertical building by 5%, as well as cutting down their data entry time for at least half a day a week.
Great, thank you. Arta Momtazi at BenchMarx.
Hi everyone, I hope you can hear me. My name is Arta. I'm the CEO and co-founder of BenchMarx. So really at the heart of it, BenchMarx looks to help builders harness the power of real-time project data, really to make better financial decisions, while at the same time we're helping to benchmark their performance. So we start builders, we help them by going paperless in the field, and then we help them start by like digital time cards and time material forms, and then we use that information to improve how they measure and manage productivity. So nowadays builders can know on a daily basis how much money they've made or lost from their subcontractors or their own crews on a daily basis, and they can look into the root cause of what was causing those efficiencies and inefficiencies. So our team's based here out of Toronto, and we got a solid team of construction professionals like myself, spent about 10 years in the construction industry before leaving and then coming into this role. And then we got a good team of machine learning engineers who are really looking to deliver actionable insights back to our project teams to really forecast risk and cost overruns before they occur.
Great, thank you. Dominic Sévigny with SmartUse Solutions.
Yep, thanks. Good morning, everybody. Yeah, I'm the founder of SmartUse. So we're based here in Montreal area. Basically, SmartUse, it's a Canadian construction cloud app for sharing blueprint and documents in real time, especially for GC and subs. Basically, including markups, punch lists. We offer everything that to collaborate in offline, online for construction people on the job sites. Basically, we have a hosted cloud here in Canada. We're following the tools to build a complete platforms in terms of takeoff, plans and drawings, RFI submittals in the future. So basically, we want a simple, intuitive tools for smaller and larger company. We've born from a Hydro-Quebec ID back in 2012, and initially the goal was to replace the traditional superintendent's wood plan table on the job trailer. So we built it from scratch, and for them, and today we have a huge chance to be used across many other energy companies like OPG, New York Power Authority. Maybe some of the attendees here already use our product on large Canadian projects like Crosslinks, REM in Montreal, Ottawa Stage 2, and KPH Turku. So that's it. Welcome in the panel today.
Excellent. So I'll pose some questions to you guys. We can go in the same order as the introductions, or feel free to jump in as you like. I'll direct some questions directly to you folks, but really hop in when you like. We'll start with Noah and go down the same order with the first question, if you don't mind. So can you give a little more detail on the business and pricing model, and maybe talk about how your go-to-market and sales strategy has shifted through COVID?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm happy to just take the hot seat. So, the other presenters may observe, ways that, I probably mostly do things poorly and answer those questions. I'll adapt accordingly. So I'll give you a little bit more detail, and then we'll dig into pricing and sort of what's happened since COVID. So, in terms of the business and a little bit more granularity, when we visualize most large construction sites, there is some of this applying to residential, but most of the work we do is infrastructure, commercial, industrial, sort of those big, predominantly mega projects. On those sites, as everybody knows, there's multiple layers of subcontracting that has to go on, all the way down from owners to general contractors, all the way down to like individual third-party subs. And so where that's most visible, we feel, is in the logistics network that's bringing material, particularly raw bulk material, on and off of the construction site. And so in infrastructure, we see this being most obvious. And so, for, say, a highway build, for example, the site preparatory companies, the paving companies, the material supply businesses, the asphalt businesses themselves, all of them will have to hire their own networks of subcontracted haulers to move material on and off the sites. This is traditionally something that's been done almost exclusively on paper, and usually same day. And it's really challenging to sort of observe those networks of subs, to incentivize them to do good work, to observe what's been done, to ensure payment, reconciliation in a timely fashion. even just to react in real time. If a project changes, how do you communicate with this large network of third parties quickly and efficiently? And so what Tread does is basically we go to sort of those companies who are hiring the subcontractors themselves. We get them to bring their entire network of preferred vendors onto the platform. And so using Tread, a company like, we'll use an example of, in one of our, larger clients is Tomlinson in the Ottawa region. They bring all their vendors on. They use Tread to send work out to them. The drivers themselves have mobile apps in their cabs, so we can track them in real time. We can observe performance. They can communicate regularly. And basically it creates, again, this virtual fleet for a day. And so as a result, construction companies are able to send work out more efficiently. They're able to understand their spend and consequently improve their ROI on their subs, move more material more efficiently for less money, and the subs get better utilization rates on their equipment. And so we really see what we do as a win-win in that regard. To say nothing of sort of the AI-driven optimization tools that we build on top of that, which not only allows people, the first part allows people to see what's going on, the second part allows them to improve what's going on. So that's a really important thing of what we do. From a pricing perspective, it depends sort of on the use case to a certain extent, but there's a base utilization fee that comes with the platform, and then depending on the type of client, we have different tranches of pricing depending on the amount of volume they're putting through the system, and which modules they decide to turn on or turn off. So very similar to a combination of base SaaS with some quasi marketplace or platform fees coupled onto it. And I hope that wasn't too long of an answer. From a COVID perspective, what has changed for go-to-market is we don't have to go meet our clients in person anymore because we can't. Most of them are in the United States. We very much, every one of us here and everyone who's observing this webinar, I'm sure, knows the nature of construction and the experience of sort of the steak and handshake type industry. Most of our clients are in the States. Until recently, we had no physical salespeople in the States, and we didn't want to, put people on planes across the border. And what we've actually found is, as the industry has been forced to move from an office to a home office, and from, paper ledgers to home computers, we found people absolutely willing in the industry to digitize. And so we've moved totally digital in our go-to-market. And we've actually seen sales cycles speed up quickly, significantly, because suddenly people are very much more accessible over a digital medium. So that's been a really exciting thing for us. And happy to dig into this more, but I realize other people need to answer this question too, and we have lots more to go to. So I'll pause there and pass it off.
Perfect. Hopping over to you, Kevin.
Great. So a little more detail on Dozer and maybe myself. I come from the space. I've rented a huge amount of heavy equipment in the past. I actually started one of the largest landscape companies in Ontario. Have left that since starting Dozer. What I found was it was super, super frustrating and very hard to find the availability and pricing for heavy equipment. So because of that, we went out and we built Dozer.com. That was our first product, still being used by many, growing, very, very rapidly. It enables people to see that real-time pricing and availability, and it enables contractors to actually be able to purchase online. So, I was ready, 5 years ago to purchase online, but what everything that's happened with COVID, e-commerce has. The expectation of the availability of e-commerce, I would say, has sped up by at least 5 to 10 years. I guess that brings me to our second product. So as soon as COVID hit, we were already thinking about this. We were hearing from the suppliers that they wanted the ability to rent online. One of the reasons they were using Dozer.com, the marketplace. So we built web stores. Really what we did was we repurposed our tech. So we had figured out a way to be able to do, to know real-time pricing and availability and present it online. repurposed the tech, we white labeled it, and now the tech is also powering those transactions on the websites of the suppliers. So a real uptick there from both the supply and realizing that wanting to be able to perform e-commerce, and then on the demand, contractors just expecting to be able to rent online, and frustrated if they can't. So that's really where Dozer's software has stepped in. As far as fees go, for a contractor, there's no fees. It's all baked in, and it's charged to the supplier is either small transaction fees, or in the web store's product, more of a software as a service fee. So there's no additional fees. You just see the equipment, you rent it, you book it. It's exactly what you see. That's really what we're all about, is transparency.
Excellent. Matt, hopping over to you.
Yeah, so for Indus, our vision has always been, for the largest construction sites, every risk, every opportunity to improve, every efficiencies that we can see should be caught, synthesized, and then communicated by software. These insights we then send to our users on the ground and experts around the world, so that they can collaborate and help manage this project much more efficiently. Gone are the days where we are one of the deadliest industry in the world. Gone are the days where our schedules always delay and budgets overrun. So with that is our vision. What our solution does is that we provide cameras on job sites, or connect the existing of your IP cameras from a security point of view into our machine learning network, and be able to start giving you all the insights that you needed to better your job site safety and productivity sake. In terms of pricing, how we price it is based on the size of the job site and the different modules that we have in terms of the different insights. But I think in a nutshell, it's basically the SaaS model. So going to be a standard implementation fee and a monthly software fee on top of it. Now, from a COVID point of view, we do see a renewal interest in health and safety use cases. Quite frankly, before that is a lot about productivity. How can you help save me money on a job site? We do see that there's more and more interest in health and safety, being able to automatically understand social distancing parameters. Do you have more than 2-3 guys gathering together, to mask, to other things from a safety and health related. We also see a huge uptick in a new phenomenon of not going to the job site as much as possible, right? So I think we all know that. And a lot of our customers call that remote assurance. Being able to have a visual live view of what's happening across all the portfolio of projects is a very interesting value proposition that we see for our customers. So from a go-to-market point of view, we have been doing a lot of the sales work virtually anyways from a demo point of view. And typically, we do want to go see the customer and shake their hands for the deal to sign. But like in this case, that step is now no longer required. And I think having that trust built digitally is really the way to go for the next couple of months, if not longer.
Great, thank you. Arta?
Sure, yeah. Thanks. So, I mean, for us, I think it's important to understand kind of where we came from. So, like I said, I spent about 10 years at Elliston Construction in the construction industry as a construction manager, dealing with a lot of claims and time and material issues that would happen on our job sites. And I remember this one time I had received banker boxes of these paper forms on my desk to review and approve. And I think with the coming of COVID, really all project managers, all coordinators on job sites are looking to get away from that system, or looking to be able to work from home. And so we give them that ability to do that once they go paperless from the job site, right? And they're expecting their subcontractors to use platforms like this. So as an example, we have two major models in terms of what we sell into. So one is the subcontractor model, like a company like Black & McDonald, which would use it for their own personal crews or their clients on their job site. So if they run into issues or change orders on the job site, they'll be able to quickly fill out a time and material form right there on the job site. The other model that we have is as general contractors managing their subcontractors, so that if they ever run into issues, they'll be able to quickly report those issues back. So we've seen some great uptick and requests for our platform as a result of COVID. Just to be able to be contactless, for their staff to be able to work from home, and to really manage all those financial costs on a daily basis that come in on some of these large infrastructure jobs. So yeah, I think it's been an interesting journey during COVID, like Noah and Kevin and Matt have been mentioning. We've definitely gone totally digital in the way that we sell things. Our go-to-market strategy has also been digital versus shaking people's hands. That's really the way the construction industry works. Being on the job site, working with them. So there's been some value lost at that level, but on the other hand, we've been able to make the best of it and look at some of really the benefits of going paperless in the job site and understanding those real-time insights on a daily basis, right? Which is really invaluable. And they probably wouldn't have come to the conclusion of wanting that unless things like this occurred.
Thanks, Arta. Dominic, you're on mute.
Sorry, guys. I'm not like other people here on the list, so on the panel list. So basically, I'm a software guy. So basically, I'm not from the construction industry. So I've learned a lot of stuff. I remember when I started back in 2012 and 13. So I sit on a job site with Pomelo, which is our biggest JC in terms of clients, and we learn a lot. And if I remember back in 2012 and 13, a lot of people told me that 2D drawings app for markups is gone. So BIM model will follow and will be a future. And if you're looking on the job sites right now, 6 to 8 years after that, I'm still seeing a lot of traditional paper everywhere, even on a large job site, even on a small one. So it's just crazy that the BIM was supposed to change everything, and today I think it's true for large projects. But for a smaller player, there are still a lot of jobs to do with them. So basically, I'm still working hard with customers on sites to learn more. But COVID changed everything. So I'm a typical person who really like to sell my product with my hand, and because we are not just selling software, we are selling business relationships. So this is where it's really tough for me, especially. But basically, what I'm seeing right now, our let's say since March, the large deal is increasing. Small deal where normally I was able to go on site and speak with the people, decrease. So basically, there is no more on-site stuff. Maybe next year. But we took the chance to invest a lot of money on our side in terms of how we can simplify the subscription model and subscriptions, payments, renewals, and everything. So we invest this year in 2020 in terms of how we can build not only the product itself, but to build everything around the product to make it easier for customers to bring to come on the software easily. So this is some things that we learn. And in terms of business model, SaaS model is there in States from long times. Here in Canada, it's growing. We took the decisions to go all in, unlimited sheets, unlimited documents when we host documents on the cloud. But we add something that it's different than we offer, for example, for a GC that wants to subscribe to our platforms. You always have to deal with subs that don't want to move forward with technology. So instead of forcing them to buy a license, we have decided to move it a free unlimited reviewer model for subs. So that's help resistance people, smaller subs to jump on technology on their phones because they all have a phone. So we build the business model based on who is ready to bring technology. And it works. That's it.
That's great. And that's a good segue into my next question here. You guys, for the most part, the majority of the panel are construction tech gurus, but likely still have a pulse on technologies in other industries and just the state of other industries in terms of their digitalization being probably ahead of the curve of our legacy industries. So I'm curious, and we'll go in the same order here. What's your opinion on the life cycle of construction technology startups in our industries, and what do you think is the importance for teams or key hires to have strong domain experience? We'll start with you, Noah.
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think it's something like the dynamic between certainly like startup technology development, release, sales, iteration versus the cycles that the construction industry is used to working in. I think can present some really unique and interesting challenges that I'm sure everyone around this panel has experienced at one point or another. I think the data on digitization in the construction industry in particular is pretty clear. That being that, as compared to other large industries, the relative investment in R&D, particularly in digitization tools, is significantly lower than relatively sized peer industries. So, that being in most large industries, about 3% of spend is spent on R&D and a little bit more than that on software. In construction, those numbers are less than half of sort of relative peers. And I think that also relates to productivity gaps that we've started to see over certainly since the late 80s, and also really representing themselves more significantly in the late 90s across the industry. That isn't to say like people aren't working as hard or anything like that. Quite the opposite. It's just projects have gotten more complicated and tools haven't been there to catch up to help close that productivity gap. And so I think that's the reality of the industry on the ground historically. Obviously that's changing, and I'm sure we're going to talk about that a little bit more in the panel. And there's a lot of reasons for that. But I think the reality is that technology and construction haven't always, these aren't necessarily industries that have married themselves particularly well. So when you add to that I think for many construction projects, life cycles are measured in years, or in some cases actually decades or close to them. We have a sort of a time divide, if that makes sense, because startups think in weeks. For startups, in many cases, a year is 1 year is a strategic period, broken up into little tactical execution periods of weeks, months, quarters, maybe. Whereas for most construction companies, these are generational businesses. They think in much longer terms. The buying cycles are longer, the evaluation cycles are longer, and so in some cases, the length of a pilot in the construction space to test whether or not a solution has validity is actually the entire runway of a venture-backed startup. And so that can present some really unique and interesting challenges, in terms of how those things fit together. I think where the demand then comes in for startup companies or venture-backed companies is trying to understand your buyer to the extent that you can reduce as many of those barriers that were there as possible. I think recognizing sort of that first bit of what I said about, how construction has typically hesitated to buy certain technology tools, that also means that there's a complexity and an unfamiliarity with buying those tools. So the responsibility of the technology company is to make things as simple as you can, to reduce every barrier that you can, to demystify everything that you can, so that the buyer on the construction site can see the value of a tool really quickly instead of having to think in those long terms. Because then not only does the startup get to survive by being able to deploy and sell technology, but also then the construction company, more importantly, gets to derive value from it really quickly without having to wait for a multi-year pilot cycle. So, but I think that where that comes from is, a lot of really open and fast communication between the two organizations. So the startup has to be able to deliver its value prop really quickly and make things like onboarding cheap, fast, simple, mistake-free. It has to be able to train the technology company or the construction company and its partners. And similarly, the construction company needs to champion that change internally. And not just sort of assess that tool the way you would a historical tool. And so there's a little bit of change that is required on both sides, but I think where it really comes from is delivering a product that's simple, really easy to use, and has a value prop that's really easily distilled to an audience on the other side that's actually open to change. And that takes a lot of communication between both sides. And So I think where that differs from other industries is, again, that those different time scales of adaptation. But I think we're seeing that change really quickly, because the counterpoint to the data I presented at the beginning of this answer is that when you look at changes in technology spend, that being sort of the year-over-year deltas, the construction as an industry is changing faster than all other sort of industries of associated size. So those changes are being driven right now. And so it's a really cool time to be in it, because we're watching client behavior change month over month, which is something that's new in the space and really cool to see. So I hope that answers your question.
That's great. Kevin, if you have some thoughts to add. You're on mute. Yep.
Yeah, I've got a few. The challenge about being second is, Noah, you answered that very, very well. I echo, pretty much everything. Maybe I'll try and elaborate on a few things and some storytelling from my own experience, but we're very aligned in respect to that answer. I guess, there was one comment about, or Adam, you had a question about domain experience, when doing a startup like this, and maybe I'll kind of touch on that piece. I'm a non-technical founder. I think I was sort of the last generation to not adopt technology at my previous business. We didn't even have a CRM. It was, I looked at it as it was going to take a whole lot to actually get the CRM up and running. There was a lot of different options out there. They were fairly, expensive. And it's just a CRM. I mean, let alone all the other things that we could have been doing with the other panelists here. 5 years later, 6 years later, if I was starting a new business, a construction business, it would be run entirely different. I think that the amount of change that has happened in just the last 5 years and what's going to happen in the next five is so dramatic. So on the domain experience piece, I think there's a real challenge here where you're trying to build a technology company that can meet people like myself 5 years ago who, thought this was kind of confusing and expensive and hard. And I think the challenge is, in construction tech, it's we're as contractors expecting a B2C experience, but we need to deliver, a B2B experience in sort of a B2C box, which makes everything that we're doing so much more challenging, right? Like an example with Dozer, lots of marketplaces exist, right? I mean, and lots of VCs will tell you, well, you're just building hotels.com for heavy equipment rentals, but it really isn't that simple, right? Because contractors don't expect to spend, $30,000 a month on a credit card for a 50-ton excavator rental, right? They want to be able to access preferred rates that they've negotiated with a supplier. They want to be able to access, any of that sort of priority. Maybe it's access to an account rather than paying by credit card. So I would say those are the challenges that are in front of the panelists here today, and not suggesting that you have to have domain experience, but I definitely think that domain experience brings something to the table. I think, Noah, you talked about how, one iteration of tests could be, your entire runway as a startup. Being able to skip past a few of those things with some domain experience is important. Now, I do not want to write off because, there's a huge portion of the Dozer team, probably, 60, 70% of the team that does not have domain experience, right? I mean, and fantastic people, much, much smarter than me and totally needed to be able to problem solve this industry. But having the domain experience as a complement to, the engineers and, everyone else on our team is pretty valuable. So I'll just pause there. Thanks.
Excellent. Matt, any thoughts to add?
Sure, Adam, and yeah, I guess for us, I think we are one of the earliest first mover in using computer vision and AI technology in a construction site. We started this 3 years ago. Now we monitor over 100 million square foot of space. We have collected 10 million and more of HD videos on job sites. I think the journey that we have is that initially there's a lot of hype about AI. Like 3 years ago, like our phones are ringing all the time and what's happening. The good news is that the phone is still ringing. People are very thirsty about, hey, I wanted to understand how to leverage the next set of technologies. Like AI is going to be in everywhere. So our phone is still ringing. The expectation is changing in the sense that, you know, the hype of AI can solve everything is something that I think we all know it's not happening. And even from an autonomous driving point of view, some of the people predict that, hey, 2020 is the year of fully level 5 autonomous driving. That's not happening. And I actually see a lot of folks in that industry getting consolidated. So we have been taking the hard step of trying to make sure that the AI that we develop is fitting this specialized application in construction. Construction is, to me, very unique and custom, right? Like if you look at the scene, everything is changing, background's always changing, occlusions happening, light and day weather elements, different angles. It's very hard to actually do a computer vision AI on it. The good news is that it's still possible. It's a matter of which use cases require what type of resolution, what type of latency, what type of accuracy. And if we can dissect that problem and say, hey, some of the use cases is a building related, you need 100% of accuracy. And therefore, we do put a human in the loop to validate the data. Some of the other ones, you know what, for safety related, if you give them a safety risk score of certain elements, that's already actionable. So being able to start further applying technology into different use cases based on different type of expectation, I think it's something that the industry demands, and the good news is that I think technology folks like ourselves was able to handle it and communicate to it. I see the hype of it is dampening the demand, though the realistic demand is still there. So people are calling, and the expectation is higher, though they will be asking use cases, asking how were you able to solve this for me? How can you actually make my cycle time faster? How can you make sure that my job site is safer? Give me some examples who I can call. So I like the fact that the industry is starting to going from the hype cycle more into the realistic cycle of trying to figure out what's the return on investment. How are we going to actually deploy technology that way? So I'm very optimistic that way that the industry is start maturing in terms of how they can continue to use the frontier technology to help them with their own projects.
Great. Arta?
Yeah, so I echo a lot of what Noah and what Kevin are saying. I think domain expertise is super important, obviously. Coming from the construction background, I knew that, you know, if we were to develop an app or any kind of system and we put it in the hands of like a 60-year-old superintendent to tell them, hey, now you've been filling out time cards for 40 years on a piece of paper, why don't you go ahead and switch it to this? You know, we knew we had one chance when we put that phone in his hand. He'd be like, you know, forget about this. I'm not going to touch this thing. He'll just chuck it in the garbage, right? And so we spent actually at the very beginning a lot of time on our job site and ensuring customer success, right? Getting that feedback right from the crews on the job site, right from the superintendents, from the foremen, and understanding really what their biggest pain points were, you know, what were some of the challenges that they had. And then on the flip side, when we're working with the guys and the girls in the office, I think one of the biggest things that we're dealing with there is understanding how to help them understand the data that's all coming in, right? So we'll have our machine learning engineers come in, or some of our data scientists come in, and myself, you know, sitting down with them, understanding what are some of the biggest risk factors, you know, what are they trying to capture on this job site in particular. And sometimes, you know, I almost think that we're a consulting company and we try not to be, obviously, that, but I think in order for any product to be successful at the very beginning, you really got to go in there, understand your client's needs, understand what are some of the biggest risk factors, and then start to understand the commonalities between all the different contractors, and then try to standardize that process. And that's really what we're doing, and we still continue to do that when it comes to the data aspect of our work. We'll sit down with a project manager, and it's new to them. Like, no one knows how to understand their data, right? All this data is coming in, it gets overwhelming. They're not used to that. They're used to like a simple Excel spreadsheet to forecast their costs. And we'll sit down with them and we'll show them, this is where we're seeing some abnormalities, or we're seeing some productivity issues here. Let's bring in that crew and talk to them. What's happening? And we've had that in many scenarios. I can think of scenarios just off last week. We had a crew that was running, over their expected productivity. We brought them in. We asked them, what was the issue, and we were there in the meeting as well, socially distanced, obviously, and. They mentioned, the material isn't coming in fast enough, right? And you guys aren't bringing the material in. So it was something quick like that they're able to change up their habits and their behaviors. And I think a lot of it is building a new culture amongst the construction industry. And I think that's been one of our biggest challenges, and I'm sure it's been the big challenge here for all the other panelists, is to make those skeptics and turn them into really fanatics, right, of the of technology that they're trying to use.
Great. Dominic, I know you kind of teed this question off, but any final thoughts from you? You're on mute again.
Sorry. I'll be quick. I'm the good example of what any startup has to avoid when we started. Back in 2012, when I started this company, I'm a software guy. So basically, the idea behind SmartUse was a Hydro-Quebec ones. So I built the product on top of a single customer. Can you imagine what's happened a year after? So when you try to sell the software to somebody else, so you focus only on the single needs. And this is why it took many years to start really see a huge growth. So we learned that to have people on board, even if it's contractual or has an employee that comes from construction industry, can just help. SmartUse was always self-funding for now, but right now we are looking for external financing like VC. And the first thing that we will jump is to have a strategic investor. One of our GC clients has a GC mid-sized company, asked us to invest inside SmartUse. So I was really resistant before that, because I don't want customers to push to say, hey, I want this feature on the software for himself. But the goal of an investor is to make money and to grow the company. So I was really resistant on that. But right now I'm looking at that, and I think I can really see a huge benefit. And I think for the future, it will make a lot of value to the software. And we will learn and we listen customers, but I think to have someone on board will be really good. So this is just my thought about that.
Great. So we've had some audience questions come in that I want to get to. I'll pose one more question to you guys, and maybe we can try to do like a 30-second to 1 minute answer, and then we'll hop to audience questions. So we know construction tech is now becoming a bit of a crowded space, which is great. And it feels like it's getting more crowded with COVID-19. And if you think about the perspective of your customers, big builders and operating companies, likely many of the audience members today, that are starting to express concerns around how to navigate the quote unquote point solution landscape. We've talked about simplicity and domain experience helping with that. How do you view partnerships and co-selling relationships and channel partners as important to your strategy and getting reach? We'll start with the same order here and maybe do 30-second to a minute answers.
Yeah, absolutely. If I start to go over, just like wave your hands.
Okay.
Or just jump in and say no, stop talking. So I think they're absolutely essential. I think, which I think is in some ways contrary to the way that technology companies, particularly marketplaces, often see themselves as sort of this like winner take all sort of like empire building exercise. So it sort of actually, this relates back to the last question you asked of like, how do you marry the methodology of technology companies with the buying persona behavior of construction companies? Well, similarly, if a technology company is designed to be a winner take all in many cases, and certainly investors like yourself, Adam, might see the models functioning that way in non-construction spaces and try to apply them to construction spaces. Construction projects are all about partnerships, collaboration, and integration between different companies for one project or many projects or whatever it might be. And so the notion that we would behave differently as people who are designing, building, and selling tools is sort of absurd. So from my perspective, something that I think led to the failure of many early construction technology companies is this attempt to do everything by yourself. And this attempt to be a standalone solution that does everything. The industry is too complicated. There's too many interdependencies. There's too many connected relationships, from my perspective at least, for that to be a feasible thing for a single startup to solve. And so from our perspective, we believe partnerships are the only way to go. So in our space, for example, we built partnerships with some of the largest companies that are involved in the material moving space, whether that be deploying software, hardware, or ERP solutions. So, for example, we work very closely with a company called Command Alcon that builds scalehouse and ticket systems and asphalt plant measurement tools, because they have complete visibility on one part of the cycle, and we have complete visibility on another part of the cycle. And by working together, we improve the experience for our clients, as opposed to trying to fight each other, wasting resources, and probably both dying as a result. And you can apply the same thing. Well, they're much bigger than us, so probably.
I'm going to wave hands now, Noah. Thank you.
Yeah.
So, Kevin, any thoughts to add?
Yeah, there's a lot here. I mean, I could talk about this for a couple of hours. Everything we do is built off of partnerships, right? And I agree with everything that Noah said. Quick story on myself. At my previous company, we did a lot of snow removal, so it was all about hiring really great people and then getting the equipment that we could do the snow removal, right? So I really viewed every rental house that we worked with as part of our team. They were part of the landscaping company at that time, and I still view it that way, and that's exactly the way that we run Dozer. I think there's so many examples of this, but the idea of building web software for the actual websites rather than just the marketplace, what we're trying to do here at Dozer is come in and leave the industry with more than what we found when we got here. We're not trying to be a disruptor. We're trying to be, a software e-commerce solution to power the industry with what it actually really needs, right? And we know that the industry works. The whole ecosystem works together. The OEM dealers with the professional rental houses, with the mom and pop independents, with the contractors with idle equipment, and then all levels. Whether it be GCs to the smallest owner operator subs. You're completely right. This whole industry is about collaboration, and that's the way we approach the business.
Great. Matt, Arta, Dominic, anything to add? We'll start with you.
Yeah, I'll be very quick. Absolutely, I see distribution and partnership are absolutely essential for the adoption of the solution. I mean, if you look at the whole job site, right, there's definitely more than 40 different main tradesmen and contractors there. So being able to foster that partnerships with them, we're basically just another great vendors working there, collaborating with the other 40 different trades. I think the key is making it simple and fitting it into their business process, and therefore there's not a lot of learning curve in adoption. To me, that's very important to the adoption of this.
Same things for us. We're looking at partnership for some of existing customers also. So let's say license for free, and they can just evangelize the product itself. So basically, we're using existing users to just resell the product by itself. So basically, as soon as the product is really simple, customers can just broadcast good news, and this is how we work.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, Noah kind of hit it right on the head there. The industry is so complex. There's so many different moving parts, and there's a lot of specialized different pieces of software out there. I think Procore has done a great job of doing that. And from our perspective, they've put together an ecosystem, a bunch of app stores or other specialized kind of tools that are out there. And for us, I mean, as a benchmarking platform for data, we're capturing one segment of that. It's so important for us to be able to capture other aspects and to really integrate back into some of their ERP systems. or payroll or financial systems that will be able to at the end of the day bring all that data into one place for them to understand and really understand their risk. So without the partnerships, it's almost impossible, right? And every platform has their pros and cons, but it's important for everyone to kind of collaborate in that space.
Excellent. So we'll work our way backwards on this one. I'm going to hop to an audience question, starting with you, Dominic. What are some of the challenges you've encountered as Canadian companies entering the U.S.?
Yeah, it's it depends of. I think it's depend of who is your let's say competitor. For us, I don't know if it's the same things for Ontario or rest of Canada, but here in Quebec, we are seeing as a French Canadian in the United States, so it's really pretty much different with our bad English and accent. So this is a challenge for us. This is why we have a full-time person in the United States, and I think you don't have to. This is my opinion, but I think you have to have someone in state buy software if they think that they are built in the United States. So we are. I think we have United States people have a great opinion about us in Canada. And for us, it's really different. So we are, we have more Canadian customers that stop buying Canadian software because we host Canada in the cloud here in Canada and also in the state, but we can guarantee that we don't travel the data on both sides. So basically we see some changes, some advantage to be Canadian, to sell to Canadian company, but the huge market for sure is in the United States. So the strategy is to have someone locally on the United States, and I think it's tough. I will not say it's easy, but it's tough.
Arta,
let's try to do 30-second quick hitters here.
Yeah, it's a great question. We operate in Toronto and all over Canada, but the good thing about it is we got so many American players that are actually in our space to begin with, and they're really partnering up with a lot of the Canadian players. So when we're on projects, we're usually exposed to like very large American clients like PCL, Qt. These are some big players, and naturally, we're going to the US as a result of being able to acquire them here in Canada. Like Dominic's saying, it's harder, obviously, as a Canadian company to penetrate that market if you don't have existing clientele. But we're slowly penetrating it through some of these larger players that are actually coming in and playing in the Canadian space. And the construction industry is so connected overall. So.
Matt?
Yeah, for us, it's maybe a little unique and different. We see ourselves as a Silicon Valley-based company. We have our headquarters in San Francisco. Our tech is operated in Toronto. That's a little secret of us, be able to build all the great tech in Toronto. I see it as if you have good technology, it doesn't matter what market it is. But if you were to enter any market, you need a strategic way to enter it. So for us, it's actually putting our foot down. I was in Silicon Valley. It's great to speak to Canadian folks today. It's important to have a presence in that market. So we have 10 guys in the Bay Area, basically doing a lot of great technology build and listening to that market. If you want to compete in that world stage, which is what we're dying to do, I'm there to compete. So that would be kind of my 2 cents.
Kevin, Noah, anything to add? There's one more question I want to get to, and we have about 5 minutes left. Feel free to add something if you have it.
Just echoing Matt, really easy. I mean, the go-to-market is very, very similar as when we move into new markets here in Canada. If you have a really great product and product market fit, it's going to work in the US. We're growing rapidly there. There's a little bit of a nomenclature, right? I mean, machines are measured in pounds in Florida and measured in tons up here in Ontario. So just make sure you represent that correctly on the website. Other than that, everyone's been pretty supportive and they recognize you right away. I mean, when I show up in Florida, it's, hey, you're that Canadian guy I've been speaking to, even though you didn't address yourself as that. Yeah, fairly simple.
No, anything from your side?
I mean, it's I'll save time and I'll wait for time.
Okay, so this last question consolidates a few audience questions and my personal last one. We'll try to go quick. There's a lot that you could say here, but we have about 4 minutes left. So we're thinking about the future of our industry, 2, 5, 10 years out from now. What are your views on technology adoption? And then looping in some of the audience questions, what do you think about robotics and autonomous solutions and how that fits into this digitalization of the job site? So future of our industry from a technology point of view in the next 2 to 10 years. Noah, go.
No big deal, right? Yeah, so I'll see how quickly I can do this. So there's some things we know and some things we've observed, and then there are some things we can predict in advance. So we know that the space is still, like the industry is still lagging from a digitization and technology adoption perspective. We know that. That's a fact. We also know that is changing very rapidly, especially relative to other industries. We know that too. And we also know that the trends of digitization and technology adoption that construction is currently experiencing are similar enough that we can look to some other industries as predictors of how things are going to go. So certain areas of the like the advanced manufacturing sector is a good example. Some of the advancements that are happening in the long haul, like the logistics space, are a good example. Actually, aerospace tech, for whatever reason, there's a lot of similarities to how tech is being adopted in construction to how it was adopted in the early stages of digitization in aerospace, for whatever reason. And so I think we can look to those industries as predictive models of what's going to happen to a certain extent, because obviously every industry is quite different. With that in mind, I think over the next 2 to 5 years, we're going to see the death of paper predominantly on the construction site. I think like in the future, I don't think we're going to see much paper being transferred. And I think that's going to be the biggest change we're going to see over 2 to 5. And I think if you'd asked me 5 years ago, I would say it would take 2 to 5 years. But I'm saying it again now that it'll take 2 to 5 years. In terms of the adoption of robotics, I think that's an interesting one, especially when you couple it with sort of some of the augmented reality and BIM stuff that's been going on over the past 5 years. Because again, 5 years ago, if you looked at a lot of robotics or BIM experts, they would say in 5 years, construction will be filled with BIM and augmented reality solutions. And I think we've seen less of that than we expected. But again, now that the pace of change is picking up, I think we'll start to see it. I think in 10 years, I think that's harder. Obviously, like the cone of predictability gets a lot wider. But I think in 10 years, we'll start to see more of the deployment of robotics, augmented reality, and artificial intelligence tools alongside people. We're starting to see it today. We'll see increasingly in 5 years, but I think we'll see more and more standalone solutions in 10. But I don't think within 10 years, we're going to see the automated construction site. I don't think that's a realistic prediction. The sites are too complicated. I think what Matt said earlier about some of the predictions for the self-driving car space are effective. There's too much going on the site relative to where our technology is in the robotics space in particular. Are we working on it? Yes. Are there some use cases for it? Yes. Like I think we've seen self-driving skid steers and things like that. But I think the site of 10 years from now is going to be digital. It's going to have increasing deployment of augmented reality and communication tools between people. And we're going to see no more paper. But I'm excited for that because it's going to be a safer, more productive, and much more efficient site for everyone. And I think again, raise all boats solutions here. Like everybody wins, unfortunately, except the paper company.
I saw a lot of nodding heads, and we're at time here. So thank you guys for joining. I think we just cut off now. This was a great panel. Good questions from the audience. Thank you guys very much.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Adam.
Appreciate it.
Nice meeting you, Adam.